She listened at his feet. She served him, and she loved him. Oh, how she loved him. She watched as they nailed him to the cross, and as they placed his body in the tomb. In that moment, her hope died. She's crying in the garden. She's broken in despair, searching for her Savior, but his body isn't there. He says, Mary, glory. And every knee will bow to me, and every tongue confess. Yes, all the world will worship me. Ring the fire. My presence, you up again. Who sees and sees. Oh, oh, sees. Again, perfect example of a mini sermon. It's all right there, right? There are many stories in our Bible about women. They're leaders, they're prophets, they're mothers, they're even demon-possessed. There's women of the night, but God uses all of them, and he can use us. Gotta back up. My first one is Eve. You can't start with Eve without creation. God made this world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. He made man. When he spoke, the world was created. But when he made man, he made him in his image, out of dirt of the ground. He bent down, he picked it up, and he molded it. He thought every part of man. He made him in his image, put him in the garden, and said, tend to the garden. And then when he looked at man, he saw that it wasn't good for man to be alone. So in Genesis 1:27, it says, she was created in the image of God. He repeats that in Matthew 19:4. Genesis 2:22 through 24 says, she was pulled out of the side of man. I think about that, not from his foot to be under him, not from his head to be over him, but from his side where he can protect and she can be a helpmate. In Genesis 3:16, it says that sin occurs. For her part in this, the judgment was set that her pain would be increased during her childbirth. So God tells us that woman was created in God's image, that she was to be a helpmate and to be a mother. The next one is Hagar. And it was in the song, but you have to tell the story of Hagar. It doesn't just start with her. It starts with Abram and Sarah. At the age of 75, God tells Abram to go, leave your father, leave his land, and do what I ask. And he does. At 75, he packs up everything and he leaves. And God tells him, because you listened, I will bless you. I promise to make you a father of many nations. So, being Sarai, thinking, at this point, she's 65, I better get busy. Because at 65, I have no babies. My husband is supposed to be the father of many nations, and they're not coming. I know it took me 7 years to have Brittany, and I would have done anything. If you told me to eat an apple a day and hop up and down on one foot, I would have done it. If it would have made me pregnant, I would have done it. So I thought, she tried her best. 10 years go by, and she still has no babies. So as women, as I would do, thinking, okay, how do I make this plan work? God told me it's going to happen, so what do I got to do? Because he must have put it in my hands. So then she talks to her husband and says, look, I need you to take my maid, my servant, Hagar, and make her your wife, and have babies with her so that I can have children. And reluctantly, he does. He takes Hagar, and in a moment, she is pregnant. And in a moment, she is pregnant. Hagar's attitude changes. She now starts treating Sarah with contempt. She is the lesser of the wives. She is a servant to Sarai. And Sarai is so beautiful that kings sought after her. So she was beneath, but Hagar is now blessed. She's giving Abram the thing God promised. She is giving him a child, which Sarah could not do. So then the animosity between the two arose. And Sarah goes to Abram and says, look, I can't handle this anymore. She is not treating me right. I can't do this. And he says, whatever you feel fit, do it. So it says that Hagar is treated harshly, and she runs. The Lord finds her, the angel of the Lord finds her in the desert and says to her, what are you doing? What are you doing out here? Why are you out here? And she says, I can't go back to that place. And he tells her, go back, and I will bless your son. He doesn't tell her to go back to an abusive relationship. He tells her to go back and submit to your mate or your mistress. So do what you're supposed to be doing, do your job, and you'll be fine, and you will be blessed. So God says to be patient in his time. We all make mistakes, but we all receive blessings. Did you know that Sarah is mentioned in the New Testament for her faith? And when you listen to the story, I wouldn't have thought she would have been, mentioned again in the New Testament only with men, that she had good faith. And then we have Ruth from the book of Ruth. Oops, patience. We have Ruth. And again, you can't start with just Ruth. There was a famine in the land, and the family leaves, and they go to Moab. Ruth was married to one of the sons, and in a small amount of time, the husband dies, the brother-in-law dies, and then her husband. The famine is over, and Naomi looks at Ruth and her sister-in-law and says, I have no place here. I've got to go home. I don't have anyone to take care of me. I've got to go home. And I release you of any commitment you have with me. The one sister-in-law or daughter-in-law runs and goes back home. But Ruth says, no. Where you go, I go. Your God is my God. Where you live, I live, and where you die, I die. And then they return, and of course, Boab provides for them. This is a Moabite woman that journeys by faith of another's God. She is loyal, and she is kind, and has shown kindness, and God blesses her. How God works through ordinary people to make his plan work. God gives her a future. God gives us a future. Then we have Deborah and Jael. Has anyone heard the story? Raise your hand if you've heard the story. Okay. Israel strayed from God. They ended up in trouble, and they were in torment for 20 years. And they did evil in the sight of God. And then they cry out to God, and they say, Lord, save us. And who does Jesus send? He sends a woman. He sends, for their judge and their prophet, a woman. He sends Deborah. She is a wife, a mother. They said she was a fearless leader. She was their judge and their prophet. Over 40,000 Israelites she was in charge of. The story is found in Judges 4 and 5. And it says she gathers them together. And she tells the leaders of the army that to get away from this captivity of these people for the last 20 years, we're going to go to battle. And God is going to deliver us. And so the leader of the army is like, I ain't going unless you come with me. If you come with me, I will go. Not a problem. And so she says, okay, I'll go. But you need to know, because of that, everything that happens today will give that victory to a woman. So the battle was fought. They win. The army of the other army is annihilated. And the king is left. And he runs. He runs until he finds the tent of and he says, can I come in? And she says, he asks for a glass of water, and they give him some milk. Jael gives him some milk. And he says, can I have a place to stay? She can see that he is tired, and this battle has been a lot on him. So she lets him go and sit down. I don't know if I can say it in front of the kids,